Okay. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you again for joining us today for our virtual athletics info session. My name is Jessie Lumsden. I'm a Chapman University volleyball alumna and now the administrative supervisor of the Chapman University Athletics Department. Today, you're going to be hearing from our associate athletic director for compliance, Doug Aiken, an admissions representative, Ivan Bustos, Coach Blaine and Coach Maisland, who's going to be joining here us in a little bit, and two of our student athletes, Annika and Owen. Once everyone has spoken, we'll do a brief Q&A session, but feel free to throw in any questions you have into the chat at any time, and we'll make sure to answer them when we get to that Q&A session at the end. Just a reminder for those just now joining us, make sure to keep your cameras off and your microphones muted. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll answer them when we get to the end of today's session. So to start, I'm going to pass the mic off to Doug. He's going to give a brief PowerPoint presentation about what Division III athletics is and represents here at Chapman University.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate everyone being in here today. It's always a lot of fun to get to talk about Chapman and what our athletic program is all about, what it's like to be a Division III student athlete. So look forward to your questions at the end, but I'll go ahead and share. There's a lot of misconceptions about Division III and a lot of focus on what it's not. There's that people that it's not athletic scholarships, right? That's the big one. People think that it's not high level, that it's not that it's minimal commitment, those types of things, which is not true. Our athletes are recruited, some of the top high school and club travel ball type athletes, and our coaches recruit hard. And the other thing is that it's not not non-committal, or that it's part of your educational experience, which is true, but that it's not the only thing that you're going to do while you're here, and that's true. But what I would like to share and talk a little bit about is what Division III is, and what it is it creates it's an opportunity for student athletes to be able to excel at their sport, continue on past high school and compete at a high level. But it's a balanced experience. It's Division I or Division II. If you're receiving an athletic scholarship and you're practicing every day for the whole entire year, there's not a lot of balance there. And at Division III, there's certain things in place, guardrails in place that keep our student athletes, allow them to be able to experience the different areas of college life that they might be interested in. It is high academic. Obviously, Chapman it has an academic reputation, and our student athletes are on par and maybe even exceed to a certain extent what our students at Chapman are able to do in the classroom and so forth. It's competitive. And you're going to hear from a couple of our athletes today who are some of the best at their sport in the country, even. I'll brag for a second on Owen, one of our football players, a punter. He was a preseason All-American. And then Annika, who you'll hear from, a three-sport athlete standout, is going to run in our NCAA regional cross-country event this weekend and could qualify for nationals. No pressure, Annika, but we excel athletically. Our teams compete for conference championships and compete at a really high level. It is non-binding, so our athletes do not sign letters of intent, and if for some reason things don't work out athletically, the hope is that they've chosen Chapman to for all of the variety of things that we offer. And if it doesn't work out, there's no, they don't have to worry about losing a scholarship or anything like that. That's a picture of Sophie Servastova, a recent Chapman alum. She was a volleyball player who was a finalist, top 10 finalist in all of Division III for the prestigious NCAA Woman of the Year award that was presented to her last January at a convention. And so we're proud of Sophie, and Sophie's just an example of the high quality student athlete that we have at Chapman. Talked about our academic success, and that's just a brief snapshot of what our teams are doing. Our average team GPA in our athletic department is 3.4, and our average or 46 over 46% of our student athletes have above a 3.4 GPA as well. So pretty impressive what our student athletes are able to accomplish in the classroom. So we talked about no athletic scholarships, but I think people get hung up on that a little bit and assume that our students and our student athletes are paying full price, which is not the case. Over 86% of Chapman students in general are receiving some sort of financial aid to come to Chapman. Right off the bat, if you're accepted and meet certain admissions requirements, you could qualify for a merit scholarship ranging from $12,000 to $36,000 annually, which takes a big chunk of that overall price way down, makes it more manageable and competitive with some of the UCs and state schools here in California. And I know Ivan will talk more about that. Division III is the largest of all of the NCAA divisions. Over 500 colleges and universities around the country, including, as I said, some of the most academic reputable schools in the country, the Amherst, NYU, Emory, Claremont, McKenna, which is in our conference, Johns Hopkins, and we like to think that Chapman is right on par academically with those Division III schools around the country. There's a picture of Shannon Coyle as well. Shannon was a women's soccer player for us last year, who qualified and won a very competitive NCAA postgraduate scholarship this last spring. And so again, proud. Shannon was a captain on our women's soccer team and a 4.0 GPA and qualified for that postgraduate scholarship. Like I said before, athletics is just one of the components to your educational experience. There are certain rules in place in Division III that limit practice and playing time in the non-traditional season. So each of our teams has a traditional season where they play their regular season games. But outside of that, there's certain rules that limit what our teams and our coaches are allowed to ask and require of our student athletes, which frees up time for them to be able to pursue internships and study abroad opportunities, those types of things, clubs and organizations, projects, all of those different kinds of things. So there is the ability to do that. There's the ability. We have student athletes that are not only graduating in 4 years, some of them are graduating early with double majors even. So it's very doable for our student athletes to get in, compete at a high level, and graduate on time or early. In fact, Jesse Lumsden, who's on this call, was one of those graduates, graduated in 3.5 years, and yet was an All-American volleyball player for us. Because of this, our student athletes don't receive special privileges or preferred admissions, things like that. We don't offer athlete-only dorms. We don't offer athlete-only study halls or tutoring or anything like that. But what our student athletes do get to benefit from is what all of our Chapman students benefit from, which is the great academic and other resources that we offer. Our residence life is fantastic. Our tutoring and those types of programs are all fantastic, and our student athletes will get to participate in all of those. Division III does not have redshirting. Division I, Division II, where you could practice a whole season and not play in any games and save a year of eligibility. Division III doesn't offer that. And one of the main reasons for that is we want our student athletes to be able to graduate on time. We don't want them hanging around for an extra fifth year and just practicing all year. Our student athletes are, like I said, getting in, graduating in 4 years. And obviously there are circumstances, COVID being one, injuries, medical hardships, that type of stuff that some of our athletes have stuck around for a fifth year, but that's purely by choice. I mentioned the competitive nature of Division III and Chapman's team specifically. Look no further than our baseball program, which won national championship in 2019. And again, that's we talked about over 500 schools in Division III. There's probably 350 plus baseball playing institutions in Division III. So we won the national championship. We're very proud of that. That was our third baseball national championship at Chapman. I mentioned earlier the excellent student athletes that we have on this call today. Annika is going to be competing at the NCAA regionals this weekend. Our football team with Owen is going to be competing in the conference championship game on Saturday, and if we win that, we'll be headed to the NCAA tournament as well. And so our men's soccer team was in the NCAA tournament last year. Baseball and softball have been there recently. Individual athletes, we had a diver last year that qualified for the NCAA championships. Several track and field athletes also qualified for NCAA championships. So that is almost an expectation of us. Our goal is always to win the conference championship and get to the NCAAs. Talking a little bit about our conference, we are in the SCIAC, which consists of 9 institutions here in Southern California. You see those listed there. And the nice thing about our conference is the geographic footprint, which is quite small comparative to some of the other conferences in the country. Our longest road trip would be to Cal Lutheran, which is in Thousand Oaks, California, which is, about an hour 45 to 2 hours, depending on Los Angeles traffic, away from our campus in Orange. Redlands is the farthest to the east, and that's about an hour and 15 away from our campus. And so what that means is less class time missed. Our athletes don't have long 8-hour bus rides where they're taking off a whole day of school to go play in a competition. Most of them can go to class in the morning, and then they're ready to compete that evening. We do occasionally go on the road, and some other Division III schools in the West region are those that are in the Northwest Conference in Washington and Oregon. There are a couple of conferences in Texas that we will sometimes travel to and compete against, and UC Santa Cruz is also a Division III member here in California. And then Colorado College also is a school in Colorado that we'll sometimes compete against. But for the most part, we're able to stay in California and get all of our competition in there. The admissions process, and I know Ivan will touch on this in greater detail, but for our coaches, the recruiting calendar basically starts at the end of your sophomore year. So that summer between your sophomore and junior years is when our coaches are able to start contacting student athletes. You can reach out anytime, but our coaches can't contact you until that period. And so it's basically a year kind of spending your junior year going back and forth with our coaches, expressing an interest. Hopefully our coaches are able to see you play, but we always recommend that if you're interested in Chapman, you make that first contact and you reach out to our coaches. We don't have Division III, kind of the nature of Division III. We don't have large recruiting budgets where our coaches can go out and travel all over the country and try to get to see you play. If you're not from the area, reach out to our coaches, send them your athletic resume, send them any highlight reels or game footage, and let them know that you're interested, and also give them a schedule. One of the nice things about being in Southern California for us is a lot of the travel and club tournaments and showcases do end up coming through Southern California. And so if you are from out of the area, but your team or you'll be playing in the area, please let our coaches know, and they'll try to get out and see you play. But that doesn't happen if you don't express that initial interest. And all of our coaches' information is on our website at chapmanathletics.com. Division III does not have an eligibility center. So if you are interested in Division I and Division II, you do have to go in and get certified through the eligibility center, create an account. Division III, that is optional. And if you do opt for it, if you're going to be interested in Division III only, you can do that for free and just get registered, but it is not a requirement. We do accept the Common App at Chapman, and it's the Common App plus some additional Chapman questions to get to know you a little bit. We are looking at transcripts. SAT and ACT scores are optional. We are test optional at Chapman. And then you would provide letters of recommendation as well. So that is the admissions process, at least briefly from an athletic standpoint. I will turn things back over to Jesse and look forward to your questions at the end. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Now, Ivan Bustos, our admissions representative, will talk about the typical application and admissions process to Chapman University.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. Well, welcome everyone. Super excited and happy to be here today. My name is Ivan Bustos. I am an admission representative with our undergrad Office of Admission, and I am a Chapman alumni. Actually, recent class. I just graduated 2023, and I did play in the men's soccer program. So really happy to be here. Would love to share about my personal experiences, but I'm going to stick with admissions today. You do have to apply to Chapman first in order to be considered a Chapman student, hence student athlete. So I'll be going over some very important information to consider, especially for my freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, or even some seniors who are starting the recruitment process, want to apply to Chapman. It definitely is not late to do that. So I'll be covering some deadlines, some of the required documents that the admissions office does ask from its students. Financial aid, because I know that's always going to be a topic of concern. Being Division III, we do not offer athletic scholarships, but we do offer aggressive financial aid packages that a lot of students can be eligible for. And then talking a little bit about the enrollment timeline to know what to expect. So in terms of our timeline and our deadlines, the Common App opens August 1st. So this timeline is going to be for my senior student. This information will be a refresher for a lot of you that have already applied. But for those of you that do not know what it's like to apply into a private institution, just know that we do work through the Common App. There is no third party that you will submit an application through. We're strictly through the Common App. So once you make that Common app account, you will be able to list Chapman University, and you do have two options. You can either apply November 1st for our early application window, or our regular decision window, which is going to be January 15th. I always advise student athletes to apply early if you do have that opportunity. Obviously, for my seniors, it is a little late to apply early, but it's not too late to apply to Chapman in general. You do have until January 15th to submit an application, and that's going to be the regular decision deadline. The benefit to applying by November 1st in the early application window is that you find out whether you got into Chapman or not by mid-December. And what better way to introduce yourself to a Chapman coach by telling them mid-December of your senior year that you've already been admitted into Chapman, you've been admitted into the program that you want to continue in college. So again, make sure you're on top of your deadlines because a coach will not remind you. It's better that you do the work with admissions first and then just talk to the coach about strictly sports, right? So you have to put your part in, reach out to a counselor if you do have those questions, but I always recommend applying early. If you're a transfer student, the deadlines look a little bit different. You can see the deadlines listed in blue. If there are transfer students in this session, just know that you have until February 15th if you want to transfer into the fall, or October 15th if you want to transfer into the spring. But talking a little bit more about our early application window, early action is going to be non-binding. That means it's not a contract agreement. If you get into Chapman, the offer will stay on the table until May 1st, which is the national decision deadline. Applying early decision is a binding agreement. We do get few applications that are early decision at Chapman. We are definitely not an institution that favors early decision over early action. We weigh out both applications the same. If you're applying early decision, it's just a matter of preference and really shows your commitment into Chapman. But being an athlete, do not feel pressure to apply early decision over early action. That's more going to be a preference and a conversation you should have with your parents, because just a reminder, applying early decision is also financially binding. So that's something to consider within the application. With applying early, it is going to be a priority for my talent-based majors. So if you are within film, our Dodge College of Film and Performing Arts, screen acting, theater, writing, pre-pharmacy, or dance, and also want to be an athlete at Chapman, just know that we do prefer that you apply early, just because there is going to be an additional application process with your Common App. It's going to be called a creative supplement, and it is going to be required for all students in a talent-based major. And again, that's going to be a November 1st deadline. So if that applies to you, just make sure to stay on top of that deadline. Typically with a private school at Chapman, we are the first deadline that comes up compared to other public institutions. And again, if you're a senior in this session, you still haven't applied, you're still new to the whole process, no worries, because you have until January 15th to submit an application over to us. The only downside to applying regular decision is you won't find out a decision until mid-March. So a little bit later in the timeline, right? That's the only downside. We will still weigh in your application in a holistic approach like we do with every student. Moving into required documents, like I mentioned earlier, everyone will be required a Common App plus the Chapman supplemental questions. Just telling us a little bit about your interest in the Chapman, right? Just being a student athlete is not going to be enough to show your interest, right? We want to see students that know the area of study they want to go into. They've done their research, they've toured the school, they know about our institution, and that's where you can really demonstrate that interest is within the Chapman questions. So if you haven't visited our school already and you're interested in applying, I highly recommend getting involved with an admissions counselor, visiting our school. We offer tours Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and a lot of amazing virtual opportunities, such as this one that you're a part of, which is really great. Creative supplement, that will be only for my talent-based majors. If I have any international students on this session, just know that we do have additional documents that are required for my international students. And we do connect you with our international admissions counselor who will work with you one-on-one to make sure you have everything geared up for your transition into Chapman. In terms of other materials that we request, we do require transcripts. Just know that when applying into Chapman, we do allow unofficial transcripts. Later on in the admission journey, once you are admitted, we will require official transcripts from your institution or through third parties such as Parchment. But just know that when you apply, we do accept unofficial transcripts. Letters of rec, the sweet spot is always going to be 2, but we only require 1. We do prefer in admissions that letter of rec be from an academic instructor that can talk about your performance in the classroom. It could really be anyone. It could be a mentor, it could be a coach, or it could be a program advisor for an internship that you've probably completed. You can submit up to 3. I always think the sweet spot is 2, especially because you are all athletes. I would recommend an academic instructor and a coach. Again, the coach is probably talking about your character, your work ethic on the field, but that academic instructor is also going to be very important to us in terms of the admissions side. But again, we only require 1 letter of recommendation. And if you have additional questions or you want to submit more than 3, feel free to reach out to an admissions counselor, and we will advise you on the proper steps. The school report form is very important to us in admissions. School report form is not going to be anything that you submit as a student. That's actually going to be something your high school counselor will submit over to us. The school report form is very important because we will not start reading your application until we have the school report form. Why? Because the school report form gives us a list of all the extracurriculars, all the classes, AP, IBs, honors offered within your institution. Why? Because we know that students come from public, private institutions, and they have, different resources. So we want to make sure you're maximizing the resources at your institution. We will never compare you to another student or to another school or to another district. We will only use the school report form to contextualize your own application, right? Seeing what resources were offered within your school. So again, that's something to note and a conversation to have with your high school counselor. And as Doug mentioned earlier in this presentation, we are test optional. We do not require it. Fun fact, more than 70% of the admitted student class for fall of 2023 did not submit test scores. That kind of alleviates that pressure of like, should I be enrolling into an SAT? Should I be taking it? Again, we're test optional. We look at more than just your test scores. If you do fall above average on an SAT or ACT, feel free to submit those scores if you are a strong test taker. But again, it is not going to be a requirement. Moving to financial aid here, I know this is a very important one, and there's a lot of factors to consider in terms of financial aid. I always tell students that you never know how much financial aid you will get until you apply to Chapman, right? You got to get the ball rolling, and then once you are admitted, we will be offering you your merit-based scholarship, which is the first scholarship offered to students with their admitted decision. The rest of the scholarships will come, and we do ask you to be patient. So in terms of merit-based scholarship, that is going to be automatically considered for all my students once they submit the Common App. The merit scholarship will range from $14,000 to $40,000. And more than 86% of our students are on some sort of financial aid. And again, that merit-based scholarship is going to be the first one given to a student, guaranteed for 4 years, as long as you graduate within 4 years. At Chapman, we do want you to graduate within 4 years. So that merit scholarship, you can automatically have and shave it off your tuition. And again, it ranges from 14,000 and 40,000, and it's going to depend on your Common App, right? Your GPA, the rigor of your curriculum, and the quality of your overall application. Moving along, we do have our departmental scholarships. Departmental scholarships are wonderful. They're going to be for my engineering students, my film students, my business students. Each department has their own funding to offer that little extra push for my students. So again, that's going to be a process with our admission committee and also that department chair that you're applying into, and we will reach out to you if you do qualify for any departmental scholarships. No additional application is needed. We will reach out to you, and that ranges from $1,000 to $10,000. Need-based aid. Need-based aid is very important. That's going to be my FAFSA, so government assistance. So I hope a lot of you are familiar with FAFSA. It is going through a couple changes this year. It actually hasn't even opened up. We are expecting for the FAFSA application to open up later in December. So just keep a lookout on that FAFSA application. Why? Because the FAFSA application will determine if you're eligible for loans, work study, as well as other government assistance, right? If you are within California, if you are in state, you may qualify for Cal grants and Pell grants. So again, that's just extra government assistance in your financial aid package, and all of this is stackable. And then the last one is going to be mission-driven awards. Mission-driven awards are very great here at Chapman. They provide students with that extra support. It's going to be for my first-generation students, my foster students, military students, and the list goes on. If you want to look at the mission-driven awards, we have a whole list online. Just look at our Chapman University website, look up mission-driven awards, and there's going to be a lot of great resources on there. So in terms of how accessible our education can be, we did ask our financial aid team to provide us with some amazing numbers. So again, 86% of our students do qualify for financial aid, do receive financial aid. Our average financial aid package is going to be around $32,000, and that has stayed pretty accurate for the last couple of years. As you can see here, we awarded up to $194 million in just private Chapman money, right? Making education accessible here within our students. I know the misconception is, oh, Chapman, it's a private school, it's expensive. And the reality is we are expensive, but we're also aggressive with financial aid. So there's a lot of ways that we make students, have an affordable path to our institution. That's pretty much it for financial aid. This is a really quick snapshot of enrollment timeline. So again, if you are admitted, you are looking to not only submit an enrollment deposit, but we also do ask for a housing deposit. Again, we do have that 2-year living requirement unless you live within a 30-mile radius. And then academic advising will be reaching out to you during the summer to schedule your classes, figure out your freshman class schedule. Res Life does a great job of reaching out to its students as well, trying to figure out who you're going to be partnered with in the dorms. And again, we do ask for official final transcripts and test scores if you did submit them. And as you can see here, classes usually begin on the last week of August. Some teams may require you to start practice right away. That's something that you can communicate with your coach moving forward. But But again, that's pretty much it for my presentation. Very excited to be here. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat in terms of admissions. But my best advice is going to be to reach out to your counselor, right? Not only reach out to the coach, but reach out to your admission counselor. You can scan this QR code in the bottom right corner, find out who your admission counselor is for your region, reach out to them, let them know that you're interested in applying to Chapman, start that communication, build a relationship, and they're going to be your point of contact moving forward with your application. They're going to help you out. And I'm also going to drop my email in this chat. So if anyone has any questions after this session, maybe we didn't get to your question or you have questions about the Common App, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And I'll hand it over back to Jesse.
Perfect. Thanks, Ivan. Now we're going to hear a couple of our coaches talk about their individual recruiting processes with their respective teams. So first, you're going to hear from Coach Corinne Blaine, the assistant of our women's volleyball team.
Hi, everyone. I am Coach Corinne or Coach Blaine. I'm an assistant coach at of the women's volleyball team, like Jesse just said. So I coach Jesse, actually. So to start off, how we do the recruiting process. First, I have to say, send the emails. Reach out to the coaches, send the email. When it comes directly from you guys, it comes through easier. Some of the recruiting websites are a little difficult or a little bit just different. So I always encourage players to reach out directly through their emails. We watch highlights, we watch full games. With the highlights, make sure that those, we believe they're your best, so make sure they are your best with that first minute that we watch, and then to keep us going. And then, you know, you can also send full games because we like to see how you interact with the other teammates on the court, and kind of the flow of the game. We look at the pace of the game, your approaches, the athletic things that are going on, the speed of the game, your speed, your movement, all kind of aspects of it. But yeah, again, just send that email. You can email for us. You can email either myself, Coach Mary, or both of us. I would always recommend doing both because if one misses it, or, you know, we get so many emails a day, it's more likely that one of us will see it if you email both of us. The next step would always just be, if you're really interested in Chapman, coming to visit. We encourage our recruits to come visit, get yourself here, see if you can see yourself at Chapman outside of your sport. Take a tour, you can come to games, you can come to practice, anything to just see if you feel like Chapman is the place for you, and then moving forward, because we want to make sure all of our athletes want to be here. They're not necessarily being told to come here for any other reason than they want to be a part of the Chapman culture. And then really quick, another opportunity that we do for volleyball is we have a prospective ID camp that our next one is on December 3rd. Anyone can sign up, whether after your sophomore year to your senior year. So we'll be holding that at Chapman. So kind of gives you an opportunity again to meet the coaches, meet players, meet alumni, and kind of just feel like, if you feel like Chapman's a place for you, then we want to continue. But let me know if you have any other questions, and I look forward to talking.
Awesome. Thanks, Corinne. Now you're going to hear from assistant coach for both cross country and track and field, Baron Maisland.
Hi, everyone. I'm kind of running around. I have a practice right now, but just kind of stepping away. It's loud. There's some music going on the field, so I had to leave. But yeah, our recruiting process is very similar to that from our other coach, Coach Corinne. You know, we really try and focus on getting you on campus. That's big, you know, actually experiencing what it's like to be a potential student here, meeting with some of our current athletes, watching a practice. That's big for us, not only, you know, to have you on campus, but for you to meet a lot of our actual athletes and get a feel for what it would actually be like if you were a student athlete here. But you know, if you haven't been in contact with coaches or you're looking to, you know, get more involved, please email any coach that you're interested in, whatever sport you're interested in, it's really important that your name gets seen. The more times that coaches see your name, the more times we recognize you. Let's just be honest. Really, really focus on updating the coaches on how you're doing throughout the year. It really, really helps us get to know you a little bit better, instead of just like never hearing from you and saying you applied and all of a sudden you show up on campus. So it's really important for us to get to know you better. But yeah, once that happens, once we get athletes on campus and check out and meet some of the team, it's really applying. Applying is a huge thing for us. It's just a big part of our program, and we can't have athletes come to Chapman if they don't apply. So that's a big part of it. I know the early action deadline already passed, but there's still a regular decision. So if you still haven't applied, get on it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just staying in contact with us throughout your seasons, and we'll get back to you. So that's
Perfect. Thanks, Baron. Now we're going to hear from a couple of our student athletes about their personal experiences through recruiting and the application process here at Chapman. So to start, we're going to hear from Annika Carlson, a junior on our cross country, track and field, and women's lacrosse team.
Thanks, Jesse. Hi, everyone. As Jesse just said, I'm Annika, and I'm so glad you're able to join this Zoom. I think that it's super helpful, and there was actually a lot of information that I learned and was just reminded of, given numbers and everything. But Coach Maisland is one of my coaches, and I think what he was saying is super important about just sending emails and sending updates. For example, just stats after your season, if you're a senior or whatever, but reaching out to coaches is super important, and sending them emails. And if, say, they might not have responded to you about one email them again. They get a lot of emails, and sometimes your email might get lost. So just continue to keep in contact and do what you can in order to make those connections. And also, visiting Chapman is super important, because then you're able to actually get a feel for the university. And during my experience, it was kind of weird just because of COVID. I'm a junior right now, so when I visited, it was very, like, no one was on campus, but I still could get a feel for what it would be like to just walk around on campus day to day. And I loved how the Circle, which is where there's a lot of nice restaurant options or places to study, is so close to campus. And then you can live at the dorms, which it's like a 2-minute walk to practice, which is super easy. But anyways, you should definitely try and visit and send emails. And then also, if you're able to get in contact with anyone on the teams, getting to know them a little bit is nice, and asking questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to be yourself and get involved as much as you can. Just get your name out there and continue to reach out.
Perfect. Thanks, Annika. Last but not least, I'm going to turn it to senior on our football team, Owen Tapia.
Hello, everyone. So glad you guys can make it today. As Jessie set this up, she asked me to come speak, so I'm glad I could make it and share my experience with you guys. So I am a senior football player for Chapman. I started getting recruited here, I believe, my senior year of high school. The recruiting situation for me was quite interesting, because I had no idea what D3 was in high school. I had no idea Chapman even existed. I was recruited to other colleges coming out of high school for football. And every time I visited them, it became quite apparent that you are there to play football, or you're there to play that sport, and your academics are what they tell you they are. As someone who's very into my academics, I'm a biochemistry and molecular biology major with a minor in neuroscience. I take my academics very seriously, and I wanted to find a school that could match that. And so I decided not to advance with those recruitment options and start exploring other areas where I could play football still, play the sport I love, as well as, pursue what I wanted to do academically. And sure enough, in my emails, it was Coach Shine, one of our football coaches, saying how they were recruiting kickers and punters. I'm a punter. And so, D3, I was very skeptical about it because, as a senior or a junior in high school, you're thinking about, the bright lights under the huge stadium. So I was very, taken aback of what D3 could offer. And so I started exploring these options more. And as I visited Laverne and Whittier, and they had much to offer as well. But as a STEM student, once I walked onto the Chapman, campus, the background behind me is actually our Keck Center, and that is our brand new science center, and it is as nice as you can imagine it is. And right when I stepped on campus, I was here with my parents, and they knew it was home for me, and I knew it was home for me as well. And sitting down with my head coach, we didn't talk about football once for an hour. We just talked about what options I could have here and what options I could have coming out of college. And as I'm here, I've co-authored a couple papers. I'm working on my research, and I have the ability to teach here next semester while I'm waiting for my grad applications to go through. I'm trying to pursue my PhD in biochemistry, which would not be an option going to other schools. So having the ability to come here and having the ability to pursue what you want to pursue while playing the sport you want to play and be successful in that as well is what I think D3 is all about. Being on this football team, I have a family. I have another family here. I'm close to home. You're in Southern California. The weather, you cannot get any better. You're, 30 minutes from the beach, 30 minutes from Disneyland, and 30 minutes anywhere else you want to go. So I'm ecstatic that I came here, and I'm ecstatic that you guys are exploring your options to come here as well. I think it's an amazing school, and I'm excited for all of you. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thanks, Owen. With that, since we've heard everyone talk, we're going to now enter our Q&A session with the 15-ish minutes we have here. So feel free to type your questions in the chat. If you're thinking of something, I'm sure someone else is too. So put any and all questions out there. But to get started, one of the biggest questions that we always get asked on these sessions is with our team's policies surrounding Greek life. Chapman University does have a big Greek organization on campus. So whether either one of my student athletes or one of my coaches wants to take this and talk about your team's policy surrounding Greek life, student athlete involvement in Greek life. Yeah, Annika, go ahead.
Yeah, so Greek life is interesting just because for some teams you're allowed to be involved in it and some teams you're not. So for example, my lacrosse team, you're allowed to be involved in Greek life. But for track and field and cross country, you're not. And that was actually changed within the recent years. But if you do join a sport where you are able to, I think it's just about being able to balance whatever you get involved in. So it's up to you if your team allows it. And it does depend on the sport. So I'm not sure about all different types of sports, but it also is super important for you to understand that when you are coming to Chapman, it is a commitment to play a sport, and it can be difficult on your team members or your coaches if you're not being able to prioritize being a student athlete.
Awesome. Thanks, Annika. She said it perfectly. Some of our teams do and some of our teams don't allow their student athletes to be part of Greek life. So if that is something you're interested in when coming to Chapman, make sure that is recruited or talked about in your recruiting process with whatever coach and whatever program it is you're trying to be a part of. The next question here, I'm going to turn to Doug. I'm going to combine a couple questions here. Do you have to be recruited to play sports at the university? And do some of our programs accept walk-ons for athletes?
Good question. Because we don't offer athletic scholarships, I guess technically everyone's considered a walk-on, but our coaches do recruit. And so if you're showing up on campus and this is the first time that you're reaching out to our coaches, they're probably not going to have a spot for you. Our coaches, especially the smaller teams where they might only be looking to fill 5 or 6 spots on their roster, they've got those athletes kind of already, they've already promised those spots to them through the admissions process. Once they've been admitted, once they've deposited and committed to coming, then they will fill out that roster. Occasionally you'll have athletes that are invited to just try out once they get here, but I don't recommend that. If you're here, you're on this call right now, like you're obviously thinking about it, the best thing to do would just be to reach out to that coach and let them know your interest and start exploring that. Because if you show up, even almost in the springtime, it might be too late because a lot of our coaches already have those roster spots filled.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. This next question I have here, I'm going to start with Ivan and then pass to one of our coaches. How are gap year student athletes looked at from an admissions standpoint and then a recruiting standpoint?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in terms of a gap year, as long as you are not taking any college course credit during that gap year, you will be considered a first year student. So you are able to apply like normal through the Common App as a first year student. If you decide to take any community college course credit while you're a gap student, let's say maybe you have a job or you're going through some family responsibilities, that's all information we want to know. But as soon as you take a college course, you will be considered a transfer student. And for further information, we do work closely with our transfer students. So feel free to reach out. I'll drop my email at the end of this session. If you're currently taking a gap year, feel free to reach out to me and we can take a closer look.
Awesome. Thanks, Ivan. And then for either one of our coaches, whether Corinne or Baron, you want to take this. Do you guys evaluate gap year student athletes any differently in your recruiting processes?
I can take it. So just talking about gap year, right? You cut out a little bit. So,
yeah.
But gap year, yeah, I mean, if you're taking a gap year, still like stay in contact with the coach, right? If they don't know you're planning on that and you're still planning to come to Chapman, you should always stay in contact with us. It just helps us out to really like Doug talked about on roster spots and stuff like that. It's important for us to know that you might be an option for us. So gap years are your plan. Continue to be in contact with the coaches. If say you're a transfer student, there's also the eligibility, whether you competed at another school or not, and we'll be able to trace that from your previous institution and see how much eligibility you have as well. So that's why we need to stay in contact with you, because if you just show up and it's a lot longer process if you're a little late to the game. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Baron. Ivan, I'm going to turn this next question to you. If you don't get admitted of early action, does that eliminate you from pursuing athletic options or does that push you to regular decision? What happens if you get denied or deferred at that early action admissions deadline?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are two options. We may roll a student over to regular decision. So we might wait a little bit longer to give you a decision back. If you are denied and we didn't know that you're a recruit and you're still working with the coach to get everything settled in, you are able to appeal. You're able to reach out to your admissions counselor, explain your situation. And in certain cases, we may reopen your application and ask for additional information. That is going to be a case-by-case basis. But again, if you miss the early application deadline, it doesn't mean you don't have any chances of getting into the athletic team. You still have until regular decision to apply. And if you are denied from early, you are able to appeal. And again, it's a case-by-case basis. So you do have to reach out to your admission counselor and also keep your coach in the loop as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Ivan. We got a question here about specific showcases for football coaches. Oh, and I don't know if you want to share about that at all, about specific showcases you did in your recruiting process, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I also got a direct message here for another question. I'll tag that as well. So I'm a little bit of an oddball, as my position group is something called a specialist. Sorry for anybody who's not football. I'll get specific here real quick. So I'm what's known as a specialist. So recruiting for me is different. I'm not necessarily the person you look at, you would find film for. But I do know that we run something called the Gridiron Camp. That's, I think, earlier July time. And there's more information about that, I think, under our Chapman football program website. But basically, that's a little like skills camp where you can come out and, let the coaches see what's going on. And then the question I got in here was, are there other types of, is there a freshman JV team as well? There is not. You can think of it in college as a varsity team. And that's it. So it's the best player will play. On the football team, I know my freshman year, I was a starter. There's like 4 other freshmen that were starting. Even now, as a senior, there are 4 or 5 freshmen that are starting. It's specific to football. It is harder for the freshmen to, get in. I'm 22, competing against an 18-year-old. It is what it is, but it does happen. And but the Gridiron Camp is what you really want to look for the skills positions. And then anything else, just send film to the coaches and they'll take care from there. Thank you.
Jesse, I also reached out to Coach Shine with that question. And our coaches do go to a showcase in Brentwood up towards LA that happens every December. And we do have coaches that also go to a Terry Donahue showcase at the Great Park in Irvine, which is usually in February. So there are opportunities to be seen by our coaches, but as Owen said, just reach out to the coaches and let them know.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Next question here is for my coaches. So whether Corinne or Baron, if you want to start with this one, do you start a recruiting process ahead of time during your junior year, or do you need to be admitted first to be considered for a spot on the roster?
I can take this one. No, we start recruiting process as early as you want to reach out, kind of send that email. I saw another question here about emailing out of the blue. You can email out of the blue. That's kind of one of the best ways to do it, because the recruiting websites and stuff like that are all kind of their standard way, so that all the emails look the same. So honestly, if you send one out of the blue, it kind of stands out a little bit more. And that's kind of what we're looking for. But you don't have to be admitted to be recruited. Basically, that's how we do it.
Perfect. Thanks, Corinne. Baron, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I see a question in there kind of specific to track and field, but standards, I think that the easiest way to kind of think or see how you compare is actually looking at our conference. So if you look at our conference, if you're looking at specific marks, like times or or just regular marks on how far you jump or high you jump or how fast everyone is, you can kind of see how you stack up versus the conference. So you can find that on TFERS. I can put a link in the chat where you can search that, but that's a pretty standard site to go check and see rosters and who's on what team. And actually you can actually search how you compare to current athletes in our program as well. So but we can also talk to you personally about that. So give us a email and we can talk more about like how you fit with our program. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Coach. We got a question here about basketball showcases. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I do know that our coaches do have one here. Not sure when they're planning on doing it this year. Doug, if you know any more information about that. Sounds like it's still in the planning process.
I don't know. A lot of our coaches, and again, you'll find this out, just by reaching out to the coach. But as Coach Blaine talked about, we offer a prospect camp for volleyball. Men's and women's basketball both offer similar. Our baseball offers one, and so those are opportunities for you to get to our campus, get to play in front of our coaches, and just kind of see what it's all about. I think they even sometimes will eat a meal in the cafeteria, so you kind of get a taste of what it's like to be a student at Chapman.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug. We got about 5 minutes here, so feel free to throw any last minute questions you have in the chat. We'll make sure to get to them by the end of today's session.
I have
One
a question for Annika and Owen. If especially Owen as a biochemistry major, and how do you both, and Annika with the 3 sports, how do you time manage as a Division III student athlete?
Time management is definitely a trial and error thing. Freshman year, it is, it's a change. You're not in high school anymore. A lot of the classes that I've taken in high school, I didn't feel like I needed to study for, and now in college, it's not like that. It's studying a lot. As a student athlete, you need to realize what your priorities are early in your career. My priorities were with academics as well as athletics. So a lot of times, after practice, I have to hustle over to the library and study for an exam the next day, or on a Saturday after a win, maybe I can't go out and celebrate with the team. I might have to cut that short and do some homework. I have a pretty aggressive major. I'm not sure if any of you guys are coming in as biochemistry as well, but you will see that there is time to do everything. I'm not like a social recluse. I have my fun. I'm out being social. I'm on top of my work. I play sports. You can get it done. It is not an issue at all.
Yeah, like Owen said, definitely trial and error. I got my to-do list right here. That's a big go-to for me. It doesn't always get checked off every single day, but finding those methods that can help you, and also your teammates who have gone through the trial and error can really help guide you. And I'd also say that it's possible and you can do it all, but it also is a sacrifice. Like, you do have to work hard, and like Owen was saying, you have to study. There's no not studying, because also in order to play athletics, you still have to be like academically eligible. So you have to be able to like manage everything. But something that is super helpful for me is when I am looking at registering classes, I'll write out when my classes are, and I'll write out even like, so when I have practice, and then I'll lay out when my classes are, and then if I have to do a second practice for that day, I'll lay that out, and I'll make sure I have time to eat breakfast, eat lunch. Like, you have to make sure that you put those into your schedule as well, like the smallest little things, because it will add up, and you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself at the same time. So that's another layer. And I did see a question about tutoring. We don't have, and Doug responded to it briefly, but we do have a tutoring center, and you can get help. It's not specific to student athletes, but there's also a center for learning disabilities. So if you have learning challenges, you can just submit your whatever like issue, like needs that you have or accommodations that you need, you can send them in, and then you can actually go take tests in specific testing rooms, so it's completely quiet. And if you're someone who needs to type for an exam instead of write on paper, then they have desktops there for you to do so. So there are great resources, and that is another reason that I chose Chapman, is because it's smaller and smaller class sizes, so you're able to get that help. And professors have great office hours that are super helpful as well, and tutoring. And any questions about that, you can also ask me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. In the chat, I put the link to the Chapman Athletics website. There you can find information about all of our teams, our athletes, our administrators, our staff. And then there's also a link at the top that says prospective students. Hyperlinked there is our student athlete questionnaire where you can start your recruiting process with our coaches. So feel free to check out our website, our live streams to our sporting events. Contact information for myself and Doug can be found on the athletics website. So feel free to shoot us with any emails or any questions you may have. But otherwise, thank you again for joining tonight's virtual athletics info session. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.